Just had another 1 hour long consultation. Figured I'd share it with you guys. I'll talk briefly about a couple of the questions that were asked, and then we'll just get right into it. What's the difference between a 1099 independent contractor and a W-2 employee? Should I have an employee? Should I hire a driver as a 1099 contractor? Pros and cons. How much should I pay my driver? Is Amazon Relay a good place to start? Is Amazon Relay, do they pay well? Is it a really good broker? What are my options? Is it hard to find a box truck driver willing to go over the road? Why would you get a dispatcher? Can't I just dispatch my own truck? Are they really worth it? Are they good? How much work is it really to dispatch your own truck? Cost per mile. How do I calculate it? What variables go into it? Why do I care? Is it important? Can you tell me how to calculate my cost per mile? Those are some of the things I go over in this call. I hope you find this information helpful. If you want to schedule a consultation with me, the link is in the description. You can ask me whatever questions you have, and we can have a meeting, and hopefully you learn something.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and...
Hey, this is Zach Pasquarello. Yeah, absolutely. What are your questions? Yeah, so my insurance company, first of all, they specialize in trucking, which is nice. They understand the industry. And they are just a brokerage, from what I understand. So they don't actually have insurance. They just are an agent for me. They shop around. I'm pretty sure insurance is very similar across the board. Whoever your agent is, I think a lot of people just go with Progressive in the first year. My agent told me that was my best bet for year one. I'm coming up on my second year renewal. He told me he shopped around and he said that Progressive is probably the best bet for me going into year two. I've heard in your first 2 years it's Progressive, and then after that you can start shopping around and maybe find better deals. From what I understand, insurance is all pretty similar. What I really care about is the customer service from the agent. So I have a lot of questions, obviously, and so my agent is very responsive to phone calls, emails, text messages, and that's what I really appreciate. Especially once you start working with new brokers, you're going to need various certificates of insurance with different brokers listed as on the insurance document. And my insurance agent is just very quick at responding with those documents, which really helps whenever you're trying to book a load. I will send you an email with all of his contact information after the call. Yeah, so basically, are you wondering, should you have him be a 1099 or a W-2 employee, or have you already decided he's going to be a 1099 and you kind of want to know like the ins and outs of acquiring a 1099 contractor? Yeah, and I have my brother drive for me, and that's exactly how we started. He started out as a 1099 contractor. So first of all, just to explain the cost of having a W-2 employee, there's really two big expenses for you as an employer. You're going to have a payroll tax of 7% of his wages, and then workers' comp is like close to 5% of his wages. So right off the bat, you're right. From a business perspective, you will, you pay him $1,000, you're going to pay 12% extra on that $1,000. So that is a pretty significant expense, having a W-2 employee. But if he is a 1099 contractor, that 7% payroll tax doesn't go away. It just gets transferred to him. So that might be a good conversation to have with him. He's just going to have to pay that 7% extra payroll tax as an independent contractor. And then there will be no workers' comp insurance. So I know you said you've got a great relationship with your dad. So if he were to get injured on the job, your company would not have to, he wouldn't be an employee. You wouldn't have to pay for, lost time from a workers' comp perspective. But technically, since he will be operating your equipment, it's a really big gray area, but from what I understand, he's technically an employee. So having him be a 1099 contractor is not technically the right thing to do. Worst case scenario, he could sue you from an independent contractor perspective, but I know you said he's family, so it's probably not going to happen, but I just want to let you know that, he could probably come back at you if he were to get injured, or if you were to fire him, he probably could come back at you and say, hey, I got injured, you owe me X and Y for this, or you should have paid my payroll tax for me. So that is always, something that could happen, incorrectly labeling someone as a 1099 contractor. No. So he's been driving for me for almost 10 months, and he is still a 1099 contractor. I think it makes more sense from a liability perspective, because technically I'm like kind of operating in a gray area, potentially doing something that's not correct. So as my business grows, and hopefully as I become, more solidified in my operations. I would like to transition him to being a W-2 employee, but it's just more cost up front. So in the short term, it's a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution. The one last thing I will add about having a family member work for you as an independent contractor, I still strongly recommend that you have some formal documentation. Business is business, family is family. Just be very clear, we're keeping these two things separate. Just, please review this document, sign it, just to protect both of us. Outline, go through every single possible scenario that could go wrong. Just talk about it in that document. That way it's in writing. There's no miscommunication, no frustration on either party. I think it's beneficial to have documentation, even if it's your husband, your wife, your dad, your brother. Yeah, and then you had mentioned how to pay your driver. And in the very beginning of my videos, I talked about paying my driver 55 cents per mile, and I've come to the conclusion that is way too much. Yeah, so I think percent revenue is a much better way to do it than per mile. And there's a couple reasons why. So it incentivizes your driver to, get the best rate per mile. It also incentivizes your driver, because box trucks can make a lot of money by doubling up, and so you might find 2 to 4 pallets be on the load board for $1 a mile, and you obviously can't move that. But if you find that and pair it up with another 2 to 4 pallets paying another $1 a mile, all of a sudden you've got yourself 2 partials that are paying $2 a mile. And if you're paying your driver 45 cents per mile, there's no real incentive for him or her to push to get that partial load. But if you're paying them percent revenue, there's some incentive, like, hey, get me a partial. Let me make an extra $1,000 in the next 2 days with this partial. And that way everyone wins. Dispatcher wins, owner wins, driver wins. So percent revenue. So what I was doing is 22% revenue and $75 a night for a hotel. So if you're not going to pay a hotel, I think 30%, somewhere 25 to 30% revenue is a good ballpark to be in. And with all that being said, the best way to find out how much to pay your driver is to run your cost per mile analysis. Basically, it's, just look at all those numbers. Yes, I can show you, I can email you the cost per mile spreadsheet, and then I can also, we can set up a Zoom screen share if you ever have any questions about it, or, you want to tweak it a little bit. We can work on that together. But yeah, that's very important. I don't make any decision with my business without looking at my cost per mile spreadsheet first, because you might find something local paying $1,000 a day, and that might seem great, but you run the numbers and all of a sudden it's not so great. There's just a bunch of variables you got to account for. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know there's a company in Camp Hill. Are you familiar with Camp Hill? Yeah. They have local door-to-door delivery. They pay about $500 a day, which isn't great. But, if your driver is making 30%, that's, $150 a day. And it's heavy stuff, though. So that's the difficult part about doing local deliveries, is it's a lot more physically demanding, because it's typically not going to be it's not going to be warehouse to warehouse. Doing local deliveries is probably going to be pick up at a warehouse and then go to Office Max, go to Lowe's, go to CVS, go to, Staples, and you're going to be, or a Dolly. Yeah, the other thing, I know, you mentioned your dad might be a little older. Has he ever driven a truck before? Like a box truck? The only reason I ask is because it's a lot different than driving a pickup truck or an SUV. It physically takes a toll on your body. So, I don't know what kind of shape he's in, but it's not easy. You're not just sitting in a car for 10 hours a day. Like, you're going to be bouncing up and down. It really takes a toll on your body. So just something to keep in mind. Yeah, especially with the bumps and, you're going to be bouncing up and down. It can put a lot of pressure on your back. Amazon Relay, you're right, it does not pay very well. But the issue that a lot of new companies have is when your authority is really new, less than 30 days old, a lot of brokers don't want to work with you. But Amazon doesn't care. They'll work with you day one. So it is a good way to get started. So especially in central Pennsylvania, what I've seen is Lewisberry. If you're familiar with Lewisberry, that's a pretty popular distribution center. So what happens with Amazon, you typically pick up from a distribution center at 2 a.m., and then you deliver to 3 or 4 post offices at between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And it's usually, you're only going to be driving less than 200 miles, but they're only going to be paying, $300 to $400. And with the timing of the pickups, you can't really do two deliveries in one day. So your company is only going to really make $300 to $400, and so you pick up in a distribution center and then you drive 50, 60, 70 miles, and then you're stuck there. So then you got to deadhead all the way back 70 miles to get home, and you're only making Yeah, but it's just really hard. And I don't have access, I don't really run Amazon, so I don't have access to the early access load board. I've heard it's better. So once you run Amazon for 2 weeks and get a good performance score, you get access allegedly to more loads. So it might be better once you get the early access. I'm not sure. I don't have it. I don't really run Amazon. The other good thing is though, you can potentially run 7 days a week. So your company can make $400 times 7 days a week, $2,800. You're paying your driver 30%, and he's close to $900 a week, which isn't bad. Working 7 days a week, 6 to 7 hours a day. Yeah, being a truck driver, you really have to enjoy driving a truck, because they literally drive 11 hours a day. It's not an easy job. I use a staffing agency to find me a driver. That's how I found a driver for my CDL tractor. I'd imagine it might be a little bit easier to find a non-CDL driver for a box truck. But yeah, I was able to find another driver for local deliveries very easily. Very, very easily. But to find a driver willing to go over the road, that'd probably be more difficult. But I would recommend... Yeah. Are you talking only box truck? You're not talking about a CDL tractor? You're just talking about a box truck? No, but you can. That's an option. Finding a good driver is the most difficult part about owning a trucking company. It's easy to buy trucks, it's easy to find loads, but finding and keeping good drivers, hardest part. Yeah, so back in 2021, I had an 18-foot box truck in addition to my 26-foot box truck. So my brother was driving the 26-foot truck, and then I found a guy to do local deliveries with the 18-foot truck with that company that was delivering like big heavy boxes from Lowe's and Home Depot to people's doorsteps. And I just quite simply put out Facebook messages or a Facebook post, just, hey, looking for a driver, paying $1,000-ish, give or take, a week. And then I actually got like 5 or 6 guys to reach out to me directly and say, hey, I'm interested in this job. I posted for my CDL trucking company on Indeed, and I didn't really get anything. No one really responded to that because there's like a million different job postings on Indeed for truck drivers. So I think probably tapping into Facebook groups would be your best bet. Just leveraging your personal groups on Facebook, your personal page. But yeah, it's tough to find drivers. I wish there was a secret answer. Other than CDL drivers, my staffing agency can get you a driver no problem if you're looking for a CDL driver. But a non-CDL driver would be more challenging, potentially, if you're trying to find one on your own. Well, so I got him through I got my CDL driver through my staffing agency, so I actually pay, he is an employee of my staffing agency. He is not my employee, so I pay, my staffing agency just sends me a bill every single week, and I pay them. But I started out paying him 58 cents per mile. Yeah, so he's been driving with me for 2 months, so I increased his pay to 60 cents per mile after being with me for 2 months. Nope. If I can go back in time, I would never have bought a box truck, and I would have bought a CDL tractor in the very beginning. Yeah, from the data that I've gathered, and I'm not perfect, I'm not running a flawless operation, but from what I understand of my 2 trucks, my semi-truck is about 4 times more profitable net income wise, not gross, but net income. Yeah, I can understand that. It was definitely easier for me making the transition because I've had that box truck experience, and I've been working very closely with the same dispatcher since 2021. So I asked him a lot of questions like, hey, how many miles could you really get my tractor? What rate per mile could you really get? And then I was able to take that information, run my cost per mile analysis, and then I can know, okay, if I pay my driver 58 cents per mile, I will actually make $1,000 a week net income based on the data that I've gathered. But, I was just going to say, with a box truck versus a tractor trailer, the only reason I would ever tell someone to get a box truck is if they wanted to drive. Like for the next year, my only goal is to drive this box truck and make as much money as I possibly can. I don't have my CDL. Okay, your only option is get a box truck. But it sounds like you are potentially tossing around the idea of trying to maybe grow a trucking company and hire drivers. With that mindset, like, to me, there is no other option other than CDL tractors. Even whenever you're buying a house, typically, from my experience, typically they require 20% down, even when you're buying a house. Unless you have like a VA loan, which doesn't require down payment. But are you talking about getting a VA loan for a house or for the truck? Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never looked into the VA getting business loans, but maybe it's an option. I just don't know about it. I've never really looked into it. Yeah, so the big question, right? Should you get a dispatcher? Should you not get a dispatcher? If you're going to drive your truck, and if this is going to be your business 100% of the time, I always recommend do not hire a dispatcher. There's plenty of time for you to drive and dispatch your own truck. And the thing that I've noticed, if you hire a dispatcher, no one will work as hard in your business as you do, or your family member, or whoever's going to be your partner. So if you hire a dispatcher, he probably has 10 other trucks that he's dispatching. And if he gets you $1,000 for this load, he doesn't really care to get you $1,200 because that's a very small margin for him. He just wants to book you a load for $1,000 and move on to his 9 other trucks. But for you, that $200 is huge. So you will make that extra phone call. You will decline that load. You will negotiate a higher rate for your loads because that's the only truck you care about. That's the only load you care about. Like, you will work hard. You will get better loads than a dispatcher. Caveat, the first 30 days, maybe not, because you don't know how to dispatch, so you're going to learn how to dispatch in the first 30 days. But after that, once you've done it a couple times, once you've built those relationships, once your authority has aged past 30 days, I guarantee you will be able to get better loads than a dispatcher. With that being said, what do you really want to do Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.? Like, do you want to dispatch your truck? Because you're going to spend 2 to 4 hours every day dispatching your box truck. Yeah. 4 hours in the beginning if you're trying to find a good rate. 2 hours once you get more experience and once you've aged your authority a little bit. But seriously, 2 hours a day dispatching your truck. So if you have that time, your truck's going to make $5,000 a week and you're going to pay your dispatcher 10%. So is it worth $500 a week to dispatch your truck yourself? Yeah, you're going to spend at least 10 hours a week dispatching. So 500 divided by 10, you're going to, $50 an hour for 10 hours, best case scenario. It's up to you. And then the other thing is, so I've built this relationship with this dispatcher. So I'm going to get another truck, hopefully at the end of the month. And so it's going to be a seamless process for me to get another truck, have my dispatcher, get him a load, and I don't have to do anything. So that's kind of my plan. I'm trying to build a business. I'm not trying to be a dispatcher. I'm not trying to be a driver. I'm trying to build a trucking company. So I have a dispatcher, I have drivers, I let them manage the day-to-day operations, and then I'm looking big picture, okay, next truck, next driver, kind of next 3 to 6 months, what's my plan? I feel like my dispatcher is doing an okay job. I told him from the very beginning, I want to average $1.80 per mile. And he's basically done that. I've heard other people getting $2.25 per mile. So that's why I said that other people you're able to dispatch your own truck better than anybody else. But I feel like he's doing an okay job. The big thing with you as the business owner, you just need to treat your dispatcher like another employee. And you just need to manage him or her and tell them like, hey, $1.80 per mile, nothing less. But what that means potentially is that your truck might sit for 24 hours. So it's really a juggling act. Okay, am I willing to take this load for $1.70, or am I willing to have my driver sit in New Mexico for 36 hours and not make any money? Because for me, I don't have that option. Like, my drivers need to drive 500 miles a day so that they can get paid. So I'm kind of at the mercy of the dispatcher, the drivers. Like, I don't really have that option. Typical owner-operators, I was just going to say typical owner-operators. I mean, if you're the actual one owning the company and owning the truck and driving it, yeah, sure, sit in Florida for 3 or 4 days, take a couple of days off, no problem, because you're just relaxing. But if you have a driver who's depending on you for a paycheck, you don't have that option. Yes, and there's multiple variables that go into it, because first of all, I pay my driver per mile, and he wants to make $1,500 a week. So the only way he can make $1,500 a week is if he drives, so many miles per week, per day. But if you're paying percent revenue, that's not a constraint for you. So, you could drive 2 miles as long as you're getting $1,000 a day. It doesn't matter how many miles you drive, because you can get paid much better if you're doing short local runs. Short local runs pay, $3 to $4 a mile, but it might only be 100 miles or 200 miles. So your top line revenue won't be as high, but your miles are lower, your cost is lower, and if you're paying percent revenue, your driver potentially still making just as much money without all the extra costs of fuel. Using the staffing agency to find a driver was a huge risk. I was literally putting the success of my business in the hands of this staffing agency. I mean, there's no way to test it without just trying and doing it. That's all I can really say. I know it's not really a good answer, not a comforting answer, but I mean, if this staffing agency did not find me a driver, I would have been in a bad situation. Like, I was very nervous for 2 weeks leading up to them finding my driver. So I don't know if I got lucky, or I don't know if all staffing agencies are just really good at what they do, but I mean, the goal, their whole business model is to find you drivers. So I would assume they can find drivers. It's specifically a CDL truck driver staffing agency. From what I have seen, a lot of staffing agencies are specialized. So yeah, I mean, they're right in Carlisle, so they're not too far away. I can give you their contact information if you want. Yeah, so in the event of a safety audit, they are still my driver. Even though they are an employee of the staffing agency, they're still my driver. So I would still need to hand, the FMCSA for my safety audit. I would still need to give them the driver's information, his qualification card, I guess, like all of his background information. The staffing agency handles the drug testing in the consortium, but I still need to submit his drug test results, his driver's license, his employment history. You're still responsible for maintaining his electronic logging device and all of his logs and making sure he's compliant with hours of service. So he's still your driver, but just not your employee. Yeah, the staffing agency will handle the drug testing, but you're still responsible for having the paperwork once it's all done. Yeah, so running your cost per mile, there's a large number of ways to do it, and it all depends. So I think it would be beneficial for the sake of this conversation to really narrow down kind of what variables do you want to look at. Do you want to look at a box truck or a tractor? How many miles per week? Local, long distance? What are you thinking? So the big thing, you can do tractor trailer home every single night, but you'll need to buy a trailer. So right now I'm running power only with just my tractor, and trailers are crazy expensive right now and hard to find. So the cool thing about tractor versus box truck, a tractor is almost the same price as a box truck right now. I bought my tractor for $65,000. If you go to Penske and Ryder right now, you're going to find box trucks for the same, if not more. Yep, that's exactly how much I paid for my 2016 International Pro Star, $65,000. But a trailer's going to cost you an extra $30,000. Yes, yeah, trailers are just as overpriced and hard to find as trucks. So back to your cost per mile question. Do you want to talk about cost per mile with a box truck or a tractor? And the biggest thing with a tractor, why it's, in my opinion, better, two reasons. Like, the tractor itself is built for going over the road. Like, my driver has an entire bed, a refrigerator, a microwave, a TV. Like, this guy is living in this truck, like living comfortably, Yeah, seriously. I mean, no, not a queen size bed, but I know what you're saying. So the tractor is meant to go over the road, and the driver is comfortable. But second, it's just infinitely easier to find loads, because brokers don't have loads for box trucks. They do, but they're hard to find, and it requires a lot of dispatching, and it requires a lot of deadhead. So my tractor never deadheads more than 50 miles to go from pickup to pickup. But with a box truck, sometimes I've deadhead 150, 200 miles just to go find a load, and that's just cost that you have to eat. So it's just like the industry is there. The infrastructure and the loads and the freight are there for a tractor trailer. They're just not really there for a box truck. I feel like in the past 3 years, box truck owners have kind of created this industry, this freight industry, but I don't know if it's here to stay, but it's just difficult. It's very difficult. And if you're just starting out, the trucking industry isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, so do you want me to talk? So I can kind of talk about this theoretically with you, and it might be kind of hard to understand, but do you just want me to kind of go through my calculations and my numbers that I would do, and then maybe this explanation now will kind of help you understand whenever you do it on your own with the spreadsheet? You need to make some assumptions whenever you're doing this calculation, and a majority of the assumptions are how many miles you're going to drive per week, how much does fuel cost, what's your miles per gallon, and basically how much revenue are you going to make per mile. So those are the big assumptions that you need to make, and you can't really know those numbers until you've been in the industry, but just to play it safe, we'll assume your driver's going to drive 500 miles a day. So we'll assume that he's going to drive 2,500 miles every week, which is I do it now with my tractor. It's very doable. It's a good assumption. 3,000 is a little aggressive, but 2,500 is a great assumption for miles driven per week. And then a rate per mile, $3 a mile is average, is conservative. $2.80 a mile is a little too low. $3.20 a mile is doable, but a little aggressive. So just for the sake of planning, we'll just say $3 a mile. So your top line revenue is $7,500 per week based on 2,500 miles and $3 a mile. Now fuel, your top line revenue is $7,500 a week based on driving 2,500 miles times $3 a mile. Now another variable you need to assume is the price of fuel, and I do it a couple ways. You can go to AAA.com and you can find the national average for diesel, or you can do the average per state. So I think in Pennsylvania right now it's probably close to like $5.40, we'll say, for diesel. It fluctuates wildly. This is a living, breathing document, so I would recommend you update it regularly. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll say $5.40 for diesel. And then my truck, miles per gallon, gets 6.4. I think that's pretty standard for tractors, so we'll assume 6.4 miles per gallon. Now, with those three variables, we can calculate how much we're going to spend every week on fuel. We know how many miles we're going to drive, we know how much it costs to get 1 gallon, and we know how many miles we get per gallon. So with those three variables, we can know we're going to spend close to $2,000 a week on fuel alone. It's $2,100. So we're making $7,500, and right off the bat, we're spending $7,000. Sorry, we're making $7,500 right off the bat, and we're spending already $2,000 on fuel alone. So that's probably, and that's probably going to be your biggest expense. Your second biggest expense will be how much do you pay your driver. So there's two different numbers we can use. If you're going to use a staffing agency, I have one number. If you're going to try to find a driver on your own, there's another number. Which number do you want me to use? Okay, so with a staffing agency, they upcharge 58%. So I paid my driver 58 cents per mile. So 58 cents per mile divided by 58% is $1. So for the calculations, we're gonna essentially pay the staffing agency $1 per mile, which is crazy high, but trust me, just bear with me, you're still able to be profitable, even spending $1 a mile on the driver. Insurance, I spend $1,700 a month on insurance. $1,700. I think that's pretty. Insurance is dependent largely on your credit score. My credit score is above 700. As long as yours is above 700, it's probably going to be close to $1,700 a month for insurance. Now, the cost of your truck. So a truck depreciates over 3 years. A tractor trailer. A box truck depreciates over 5 years. Are you familiar with depreciation? Yes, exactly. So we will use depreciation to basically calculate how much our truck cost per month. With the assumption the truck will last us 3 years, we'll just say we're going to spend $70,000 on a tractor. So we'll just take $70,000 and divide that by 36. So every single month, we're spending $1,900 on the truck. Yeah, so from an accounting perspective, the amount of money that you transfer from your checking account to your loan account is not a business expense. It does not flow through your profit and loss because you're just transferring money from one account to another. The only way to capture the expense of an asset is through depreciation and interest paid. So if you're paying $2,000, so we'll just use depreciation for the sake of this analysis, cost per mile. So now we are at $2,000 for fuel, $2,500 for the driver, $1,700 for insurance, and $1,900 for the cost of the truck. Now, two other questions. Are you going to use a factoring company? Okay, we'll just assume that you're going to pay your factoring company 3%. So $7,500 times 3%. Are you going to use a dispatcher for the sake of this calculation? That's going to save you a lot of money. Okay, now the last thing that I do is maintenance cost. And if you've heard me talk about it before, I assume 20 cents per mile for maintenance. So if in my opinion, the maintenance expense is probably directly related to wear and tear on your truck. And I think wear and tear is directly related to how many miles the truck goes. I mean, just look at an oil change. Like you get an oil change every 8,000 miles. You don't get an oil change every single month. You typically get an oil change based on the number of miles you drive. So if you're driving less miles, you're going to get an oil change less often. If you're driving less miles, your tires are going to wear down less frequently. So I think if you're driving less miles, you're going to spend less on maintenance. If you're driving more miles, things are going to break more often. So you're going to end up spending more money on maintenance. That's why for my cost per mile, I use miles driven as a variable in the calculation. It's not the best answer. It's not the only answer. It's just the way I do it. So 20 cents per mile based on 2,500 miles is $500. Is $500 a week. Now, there's one other thing that I want to say. So we've been talking about your monthly insurance cost, and we've been talking about your monthly truck cost. I like to look at things on a weekly basis. So I've been telling you you're going to run 2,500 miles per week, and so for this cost per mile, I like to think about it in terms of a week. And what I see often is people divide their monthly cost by 4 to get like a per week cost, but there's more than 48 weeks in a year. So you actually have to use 4.3 when you're trying to find the per week cost. So it's in your favor a little bit because there's not exactly 4 weeks in every single month. So that's just a little caveat. So anytime I do my calculations, I divide things by 4.3 instead of 4. Okay, so and then last thing, tolls. So this is very arbitrary, and I don't know if this is right or not. 10 cents per mile on tolls. No idea if that's right. I haven't really been able to look at my numbers and know if it's right, because it totally depends. If you're driving in New York versus Arizona, it's going to be way different. So it really depends on the state you're driving in, but we'll just say 10 cents per mile for tolls. Okay, so with all that being said, just to wrap things up, I'm going to run down the numbers based on per week what you're going to spend. $2,100 on diesel, $450 on the truck, $2,500 on the driver, $500 on maintenance, $400 on insurance, $250 on tolls, $225 on factoring based on 3% of $7,500, which brings us to a grand total cost of $6,431. At 2,500 miles is a cost per mile of $2.57. So with all of these numbers, your net income is going to be right near $1,000 per week after you pay for everything. It's a little bit less, so let me tweak two numbers for you. So if you're going to be dispatching yourself, I think it's entirely possible that you can probably get closer to 2,800 miles instead of 2,500. So just by increasing your mileage by 300 miles, it increases your profit by $300 to $1,300 per week. Now, the next thing, so we're going to go from $3 a mile to $3.20 a mile, which is doable, especially if you're dispatching yourself, especially if you're really committing to this. So we're going to say $3.20 a mile at 2,800 miles. And this is why this spreadsheet is so cool, because all the formulas are built in and you can like tweak and change these numbers to see. So $3.20 a mile, we go from $1,300 profit per week to $1,800 profit per week. Net income, $1,841 net income after all expenses are paid. Now, the last thing I want to say, we're making this profit by paying an arm and a leg to a staffing agency for a driver. So instead of $1 per mile, even if we pay like top of the industry, 70 cents per mile, and let's just add in that extra 12% for workers' comp and payroll tax. So let's just assume we're paying our driver 80 cents a mile with payroll tax and workers' comp insurance. We go from $1,800 profit to $2,400 profit. So $2,400, yeah, that's like best case scenario. That's assuming everything goes perfectly, but that's crazy profit. That's per week. That's $100,000 a year with one truck. Yeah. But if you use the staffing agency, you'll still make so you're essentially losing out $600 a week by using the staffing agency. So you'll still make $1,800 profit, with the big assumption, the two biggest variables, that you're going to do 2,800 miles per week and you're going to make $3.20 per mile. Those numbers are doable, but it's not guaranteed. It's not easy. It all depends on what loads you or your dispatcher can find from brokers and from shippers and from the load board. Are you talking about a shipper? Are you talking about a shipper or a broker, or would you lease onto their authority, or what are you talking about? If you can find a direct shipper, that's like the gold standard in trucking. Like if you can find direct shippers and cut out the broker, you will be able to make a lot more money. So yeah, I mean, especially so from a trucking business owner's perspective, that's my future plan, my future goal, and that should be what you're thinking of, big picture. Establish relationships with those shippers now so that you can get their business. Because if you can cut out the broker, brokers take 20 to 30% from the shipper to the carrier. I think I have it. Yes, yeah. A new CDL driver will definitely increase your rate. Perfect. Oh, I hope this is helpful. Yeah, I'm happy I can convince one more person to buy a semi-truck instead of a box truck. I wish someone would have told me to do that last year. If you ever have any questions in the future, feel free to reach out. You can email me if it's a simple question, or like you said, just schedule another consultation. Yeah, good luck with everything.